1985 was an incredibly important year for RPGs, and an incredibly important year for gaming in general. We saw the launch of the most iconic video game system of all time, in the Nintendo Entertainment System, better known as the NES, which would go on to produce some legendary RPGs, like The Legend of Zelda and the original Final Fantasy. We saw the most iconic laser gun game in Duck Hunt, and the most iconic video game character of all time in Mario, and his debut game, Super Mario Bros. I think it's safe to say that 1985 definitely shaped the way we play RPGs, and definitely shaped the way we play video games in general, in North America at least. In the summer of '85, we saw two guys in their basement in Los Angeles, Brett Sperry and Louis Castles, create one of the most iconic RPG developers of all time, Westwood Studios. Westwood's big breakthrough came in 1990 when they were able to acquire the Dungeons & Dragons license and were able to start creating games under that title. And the game shown here was their big masterpiece, The Eye of the Beholder. Westwood is also known for its Dune series, the Land of Lore series, and then its Command & Conquer series, which would go on to sell 10 million copies and get a place in the Guinness Book of World Records. And Westwood was really known for its full motion video. This was something that got really big in the 90s. It kind of went away, but I definitely think it had a major part to play. Unfortunately, Westwood was bought by Electronic Arts in 1998 and eventually went defunct in 2003 when their last official employee was fired. Now, we only had to wait 7 days for the first RPG of 1985, and that came on January 7th when Namco released Dragon Buster to North America and Japan. North America actually got a game this time, and luckily for us, it was a great one. Dragon Buster is probably best known for being the first game to use the double jump mechanic. Can you believe that? An RPG was the first game to use that. This was obviously something that would be incredibly popular with gamers and go on to feature in many games. Along with this, Dragon Buster was one of the first games to actually use a visible health bar. We talked about this in 1984, how that was such an incredibly big and innovative thing that would go on to star in pretty much every single RPG since. Another big thing about this game is that this game is actually a side-scrolling RPG. I mean, I can't think of many other side-scrolling RPGs off the bat. I know The Legend of Zelda is probably one of the only other ones that I can... Legend of Zelda 2 is probably one of the only other ones I can think of. Another cool thing about this game, it does use a very similar in-game map to Super Mario World. Just a little thing, but definitely a very important RPG. Now, in my humble opinion, the biggest game of 1985 and the most important game of 1985 was Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar. I always want to call this game Ultima Online, but it is Ultima 4. And this game was an incredible leap up for the series. It transitioned the series from a hack and slash game into the RPG that we all know and love. It actually took the map that was already big in Ultima 3 for that time period. It made it 16 times larger, which was absolutely incredible. Now, although Ultima did introduce so many big features, I will say that its most important feature has to be the introduction of a morality system. It was actually the first game to do that. How incredible is that? Can you guys imagine a world where today's RPGs don't have some sort of morality system? I remember when Fable came out, and Fable was, 20 years after this almost? I remember that advertisement when they said, every action changes the way people react to you. And that is something that we see in all video games pretty much now, and that was a massive contribution that Ultima made. In 1996, Ultima was actually voted the second greatest PC game of all time, which is an amazing accomplishment. And in 1991, this game was actually released on the NES, and the Sega Master System, maybe a version where a lot of you guys are more familiar with it. And I think one of the most important things about this game is that this was one of the first open world games that had a truly, fully interactive world. Other games did have open world games before, but they weren't fully interactive. They always felt empty. This is one of the first games that felt like you were truly exploring a vibrant world, and I think that cannot be overstated, because worlds truly are what make RPGs great, and I think this is one of the first games to master that. Unbelievably, Dragon Slayer has its second game in the series already appear on this list, and we're only 2 episodes in. But this game, Dragon Slayer 2, Xanadu, was such an important game, I felt that it had to be included. Some of you guys may be a little bit more familiar with its spin-off game, Fact Xanadu for the NES, but this game truly was amazing. Now, I told you guys last episode that Dragon Slayer 1 had sold an incredible 150,000 copies in Japan. Well, that was a record at the time. This game didn't double that. This game actually went on to sell 400,000 copies, which was amazing at the time, an amazing accomplishment, and that's why they released the game so quickly after that game. It really was the Final Fantasy of its day. I mean, I guess that's the best way you can put it. This was the type of game that could get people who weren't into RPGs into RPGs. Like Ultima 4, this game did feature a morality system, and it featured weapons where you could actually gain experience points on that individual weapon. But this game's biggest defining characteristic was the ability to change your character's appearance. Never before had this been done in an RPG, and that's something that could not be underplayed. That is such a massive thing in video games today. Skyrim, Oblivion, all these games feature the ability to adjust your character in some way to make them more like yourself, or more like whatever character you want, and that's incredibly important. Another very important RPG was Tales of the Unknown, better known as the Bard's Tale. I'm sure a lot of you guys are more familiar with its later release in the NES, which came about 6 years after this. But this game, like every other game I've shown so far, has been an incredibly important RPG. It's like a broken record, but this was really the era that so many new features are being added. And this game's big breakthrough was actually the implementation of spells. One of the first games to actually use spells. And the way this game did it was by the bard actually singing the spell, which is a little bit unique. Well, actually it's very unique compared to other games. I can't really think of many other like that. But this game showed that you could successfully use magic into a game. And I think that magic is probably one of the defining characteristics of RPGs. Pretty much every single RPG nowadays has some element of magic, and it's one of my favorite things to do in games. I couldn't imagine an RPG world without the Bard's Tale. The Island of Kesme. You know, I think this game unfortunately has been a little bit forgotten throughout history, but this game is incredibly important. You know, this was the only YouTube clip I could find, and this was almost 10 years old, which is incredible. But this game is the true forerunner to all MMORPGs, from EverQuest to World of Warcraft, to whatever you want to say. This game was one of the first games. And you know, it looks incredibly simplistic, but this game cannot be overstated. This game was an amazing accomplishment. People were paying almost $12 an hour to play this game. This was a MUD game, or multi-user dungeon game. And it was incredibly popular at the time, and it definitely holds an incredibly important place, and I think all RPG fans should definitely praise this game and give it the credit it deserves. And the last game I want to talk about from 1985 was Fantasy by SSI. Although this game did feature a much wider variety of combat styles, and that was something that was pretty unique at the time, I don't think that's his biggest contribution. I think this game's biggest contribution is just the fact that it was able to sell 50,000 copies in North America. Now that's something that was pretty impressive at the time. Although it wasn't the 400,000 that Dragon Slayer 2 sold in Japan, it was one of these games that just helped get people into RPGs in the West, and I think that's a pretty important thing for it to have done. In addition, I just want to note this game is also pretty groundbreaking for its monetary system, meaning that the way that you could actually buy things was a lot more detailed than it had been in previous games. But again, guys, massive thanks for checking out the series. I really appreciate it. Let me know what games I should cover in 1986. Let me know if I missed any games from 1985. I'm sure I missed a bunch of them. 1985 was truly an incredible, important year, and I think that modern RPGs and gaming in general really owe a lot to this year, because I think without this year we wouldn't be nearly as far along as we are today. But again, guys, thank you for watching, and peace out.